If you pick the expenditure line by line, do you think, and then it's going back to my very first question that I had posed to you, realistic? Should we cancel some of them? Should we still go ahead and want to undertake those expenditures? Would the economy crash if we don't do any of them?
Yeah, we will crash. We'll end up with HIPIC. You can't maintain, the level at which we are going. And I think we should be very realistic about this, right? Because, and let me give you an example. Let me give you facts. I don't recollect all the numbers, right? Last year when we borrowed $3 billion US dollars, we spent 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, which is a small amount of money.
Yeah.
If you divide by 6, what we're talking about is significant. 2.2 billion, which is around 300 million thereabouts on free SHS. That's one of the elements on which we spent.
So
we spent some more.
We borrowed to finance free SHS.
Yes, not infrastructure, because remember, part of the education infrastructure was coming from our oil revenue, the capital component of the ABFA.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say totally, but the bulk of it went into the normal running of schools. We borrowed for certain initiatives, and these were the submissions that were made to. In essence, we borrowed not to support the capital budget, but to support, elements of recurrent expenditure. Remember, which I said, ordinarily you should be borrowing. And it's a look at all these conversations, these elements which we studied. That's why, former President Mahama said he would do a national, like he did with single spine on free SHS. It wasn't ill-conceived. The question is whether this year we are going to the market again.
Yeah.
The conditions are tougher, right? We're saying first we'll raise 3 billion as a nation.
Yeah.
And if the market conditions are good,
we'll go for extra 2 billion.
Yes. And when we were facing those crises, remember that was when we did the bond at 10.3%, which was, people still think, it's very high. Yes, it was high, but the markets were tough with all the conditions which I mentioned. Now, if we get a 3 billion, what are we going to use it for? It's only 1.5 billion that is going to go into the budget.
Yeah, 1.5 is to pay for arrears, interest payments.
Yes, interest payments and others, So you are borrowing to pay borrowing costs and amortization. Because remember, our tax revenue is already too small for those two items.
Yeah.
Right. Part of it will support free SHS. Right. And other expenditures. How much of it is supporting infrastructure for that expensive type of borrowing? When we did the refinancing, we started channeling, the bond money into self-financing projects. Okay. So this is the trajectory. Now, we said that we would then, if market conditions were good, we would borrow an additional 2 billion. The truth is that almost all that 2 billion, according to submissions to Parliament, right, is going to go to service debt, to pay existing debt. Remember the debt which, instead of paying down, we were pushing 7 years, 15 years, debt is due. Then we talk to the, creditors. They are going to earn their interest. So if you want to stretch it, 15 years, 20 years, they will allow you. 40 years, they will allow you. 40 years is how long it took for us to pay for Kosovo Dam.
Yeah.
Right? But the difference is the loan for Kosovo Dam was without interest. It was a World Bank and other facilities. There was a commercial element, from the Americans and the rest, but the bulk of it was from the World Bank when we were a developing country. The money we are talking about now, even at best, we are paying 6.5% or so.
As a rate on it.
As a rate on it. So you compare the two, right? So it means that we are going to spend more on interest, not at World Bank rates, but at commercial rates,
Commercial
stock market rates.
Okay.
And we are probably refinancing, right? In that existing debt that we want to refinance, we are probably refinancing debt on which we used to pay the same concessionary rates, substituting it for a higher rate. This is why we say it is dangerous for us to compare ourselves to advanced countries that can borrow, at the same capital market, not at 8%, not at 6%, but they can borrow, like Cocoa Board debt, sometimes at 2%.
At a lower rate.
At lower rates.
Because their risk assessment shows that they are in a better position than we are.
Yes, but let's use our own examples. Borrowing, let's take two dams. Right? Borrowing to construct the bulk of the loan from the World Bank and others to construct a Kosomo Dam at virtually no interest rate, low interest rate. Let's say maximum plus charges and everything, 2%, right, when we were a developing country back then. And borrowing at about 8%, Buida. See the cost of borrowing?
Yeah.
Right. Or a trouble. You remember all the dialogue with CDB and the rest, right? And these are our power projects. And so we are saying you cannot borrow at 100 and compare yourself with Japan because their percentage of GDP is 100. At what cost is Japan borrowing 100? The cost of their 100 may be 2. The cost of your 100 is 8.
It's 8. Yours is, higher
Yes.
than theirs.
And their 2 is not making such a terrible impact on their budget. Your 8 is making an impact on your budget already. We all know the numbers now, that we are spending our tax revenue. And here we are talking about the interest. And that together with compensation is what is bringing the tightening now. So you see, if you want to get to that point, you work for it.
Okay.
You work for it. When you refinance, you use the sinking fund to reduce your debt. If you don't reduce your debt, you can push it out 100 years. And I hear, saying we can borrow in perpetuity and pay on the interest. Yes, who wouldn't like to sit down and read?